Awesome people like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans don't exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which kinda sucks. But there are plenty of real people who do exist in the MCU. Peter Quill is a very interesting character. He represents all of us here on Earth in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and tries to do his best to make our planet seem way cooler than it actually is. Case in point, Kevin Bacon. Star-Lord has a somewhat unhealthy obsession with Kevin Bacon, who's clearly his favorite human actor. As we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy, he tried to impress his alien friends by talking about how incredible Kevin Bacon is. In fact, in the movie, Peter Quill actually calls Kevin Bacon a hero and says he taught an entire city how to dance in the movie Footloose. While that's a somewhat accurate description of the plot of the movie, calling him a hero is maybe a little much, even from Star-Lord. Maybe he's more obsessed with Footloose than Kevin Bacon. But the fact remains that the Baconator exists in the MCU. And just in case you wondered, yes, Kevin Bacon's real name is Kevin Bacon. Or Kevin Norwood Bacon, to be exact. He didn't just change his name to make everyone go, bacon, every time they hear it. I can't be the only one who does that, right? Anyway, just the fact that Footloose even exists in the MCU is pretty amazing. The way time travel works in Avengers Endgame is complicated. If you go to the past and change something, that's supposed to create alternate timelines from that moment. Essentially, it would create alternate timelines, but as long as you return to the present timeline you came from, everything in that timeline will remain as is. But don't quote me on that. All I know is that it doesn't work like it does in Back to the Future, which is one of the many references we saw in the film. When talking about time travel, Rhodey and Scott Lang list off a bunch of other films and TV shows as well, including Star Trek, Terminator, Time Cop, Time After Time, Quantum Leap, A Wrinkle in Time, Somewhere in Time, Hot Tub Time Machine, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and Die Hard. Phew, that was a lot. I just gotta catch my breath here a second. Alright, Banner explains time travel by saying, if you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which now can't be changed by your new future. Ant-Man responds by saying Back to the Future just must be a bunch of baloney, and if it was mentioned, then it exists. Doctor Strange is a pretty smart dude, and not just in the medical field. You don't become the Sorcerer Supreme through sheer luck. It also takes dedication and will to be one of the best in the world at what you do. When he meets Wong, the librarian of the Sanctum where he's studying the mystic arts with the Ancient One, he can't believe that the man just goes by one name. I mean, sure, that's weird, but it's not like the craziest thing we've seen. Well, he's called Doctor Strange for a reason, and it's not just because of his last name. So anyway, as anyone does when they figure out someone only goes by one name, Strange starts listing a bunch of other people who only go by one name, including Adele, Bono, Drake, and Eminem. Strange even specifically asks if Wong ever heard about Beyonce. Now, Wong didn't answer at the time because who doesn't know who Beyonce is? But in one of the funniest scenes in the MCU, we saw him later vibing to Beyonce's Single Ladies as Strange takes books from the library. There's nothing wrong with having a little guilty pleasure, Wong. Keep listening to Queen Bee and be proud of it. Spider-Man Far From Home was a really good film, as we've come to expect from the MCU throughout the years. That being said, there was just one scene that really irked me as a huge music buff. You know what exactly I'm talking about. The scene where Peter is designing himself a new suit, and a song that's very familiar to all of us Iron Man fans begins to play. Now, of course, anyone who grew up with a cool dad who only played 80s music knows that song as Back in Black by AC/DC, but not Peter Parker. Well, we don't really know what happened to his parents in the MCU, so maybe it's no surprise that he thought it was the famous English band Led Zeppelin. I remember facepalming the instant I heard that line. Yeah, sure, it cracked me up, but the music fan in me was irate. Nonetheless, I was beyond excited to learn that two of my favorite bands were in the MCU. It was also good to learn that their songs aren't just background music for us to hear. The characters in the films hear it too, which means both of these bands must exist in the MCU. There have been rumors of Keanu Reeves possibly joining the MCU in Phase 4 or Phase 5, but we may just have debunked all of those rumors in making this video. How, you ask? Well, remember the first Avengers movie where we all saw our favorite characters in the MCU join forces against Loki and his Chitauri army? Of course you do, how could you forget? We talk about it a lot. We got to see how Cap and Iron Man interacted with each other, as well as how Black Widow interacted with the Hulk. It was a great movie. Specifically, what I loved about the film was Tony's witty banter with the Avengers. Tony Stark brought his A-game and came up with plenty of nicknames for each and every character. One of the names that really got my attention was Point Break. a pop culture classic movie starring Keanu Reeves and the late great Patrick Swayze. By mentioning that movie, Stark confirms that Point Break is a real movie in the MCU and that Thor reminds him of it every time he looks at him. It also confirms that Keanu Reeves exists as an actor in the MCU, so unless he has a secret identity, he can't possibly play a hero as well, right? Right? Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the most well-known actors in all of Hollywood because he's amazing in pretty much any role he takes. I can't believe he only has one Oscar. In Ant-Man, during the scene where Scott Lang accepts the job of breaking into Hank Pym's security system's steel safe, we get to hear a reference to the classic film Titanic. You know, that movie with the famous Celine Dion song that started that cringy thing all couples do when they stand at the bow of a boat? That being said, it was the first movie that actually made me cry, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. Anyway, back to the point. In that scene, Scott talks to Lewis through the communications channel saying, "It's Carbondale. It's from 1910, made from the same steel as the Titanic." Now that's just a reference to the actual boat, sure, not the movie. But when Lewis asks if he can break into it, Scott answers with, "Well, here's the thing. It doesn't do so well with the cold. Remember what that iceberg did?" Lewis then says that it killed DiCaprio, meaning that Leo definitely exists in the MCU, and hopefully, he has more than a single Oscar in this alternate universe. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Kenneth Branagh's Shakespearean style with the first Thor movie didn't do it for me. I'm not saying it was a bad movie by any means, but considering the quality of MCU movies, it's definitely close to the bottom of the pack. Luckily, we got an awesome reference to a famous actor in the film that made me forget all about its shortcomings, or at least some of them. In the first Thor film, there was a reference to Rush Hour actor and martial artist Jackie Chan. Literally everybody loves Jackie Chan, so this reference brought a smile to everyone in the theater's face. When Lady Sif, Fandral, and Hogan arrive in New Mexico from Asgard, they help Thor battle the Destroyer. A few agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are the first to spot them, and one of the agents hits them with 3 nicknames that would make even Tony Stark jealous. The agent says, "We've got Xena, Jackie Chan, and Robin Hood," when referencing to Lady Sif, Hogan, and Fandral respectively. I have to admit that I laughed way too long at that line, but no regrets. I'm just thrilled that Jackie Chan exists in the MCU. If you broke out of the ice after 66 years, what's the first thing you'd do? Have an incredible meal? Take a look at the sunset? It's an interesting hypothetical question. When Steve Rogers came out of the ice, he had a lot of catching up to do and didn't even know where to start. Luckily, in The Winter Soldier, he's got a to-do list of things he needed to catch up on and learn about. There are plenty of things on the list, including I Love Lucy, Moon Landing, the Berlin Wall, Steve Jobs, disco, Thai food, Star Wars, Star Trek, Nirvana, Rocky, and Trouble Man. Now, this list is different depending on which country it was screened in, but this is the list for the United States and Canada. Depending on where the movie was released, there are other big-name celebrities mentioned, including Sean Connery, Shakira, Steve Irwin, and Rafael Nadal. Out of all these 3, Steve Jobs is the one who really stood out to me as a big tech guy. But now I have so many other questions as well. If Rocky's mentioned, then Sylvester Stallone also exists in the MCU. Hey, even Nirvana does. This just keeps getting better and better. Now, I just have to talk a little bit about Stan the Man in this video. It has to be done. Stan Lee made an appearance in every single MCU movie other than Spider-Man Far From Home, and every single one of his cameos were memorable. Some of his cameos have been in Larry King in Iron Man 2, a truck driver in Thor who gives his best shot at trying to wield Mjolnir, a mental patient in the same ward as Eric Selvig in Thor The Dark World, a passenger on a bus in Doctor Strange, and a crazy space barber in Thor Ragnarok. As you can see, the man has range. It's impressive. While all of these cameos were great and confirm that Larry King exists in the MCU, I have to talk about a particular one from Iron Man. During the big gala, Stan Lee is there with Tony Stark, and his character got mistaken for Hugh Hefner, the founder and editor-in-chief of Playboy. While we're sure Stan Lee wouldn't mind being Hugh Hefner for a day, we love that Stan Lee has always been himself no matter what. It's also pretty cool that Hugh Hefner exists in the MCU. I'm just saying. The Ant-Man movies are mainly focused on being wholesome and comedic. Sure, Ant-Man is rad and all that, and the reason most people go to see Ant-Man movies is to have a laugh and relax. Of course, to appeal to the audience, there are going to be some witty pop culture references like every movie. In fact, Ant-Man is just chock full of references, from the Titanic and Leonardo DiCaprio to post-punk bands? Huh? In the scene where the briefcase battle takes place between Ant-Man and Yellowjacket, they both shrink down to their miniature sizes. While the two fight, something goes awry like it always does with Ant-Man. Scott accidentally holds down the home button of his iPhone, activating everyone's favorite virtual assistant Siri. Then he says, "I'm gonna disintegrate you," which, of course, Siri doesn't understand properly, so she starts to play Disintegration by The Cure. We already learned that AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Nirvana, and U2 all exist in the MCU. Now we could even add the rock band The Cure to the list. Man, the MCU is so much cooler than our actual reality. Can Loki just take me with him when he inevitably enters our timeline in his Disney Plus show? Now that would be great. And those are just some of the real people we know exist in the MCU. Who's your favorite real person in the MCU? Is there anyone we may have missed? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos. Thanks for watching.